it's time for our hosts and guys to start the show. So Jeff and Brian, can you tell us a few words about yourselves first before moving on to Cham?
Cool. Yeah, just quickly who I am. My name is Brian Monetti. I live in New York City, but I'm currently in Pennsylvania because of the lockdown and all that. But yeah, so I've been climbing for about 10 years. I'm a gunks climber myself, so if you're from the area, climbing in the 5'10" range there, so I'm not, the strongest climber in the world. But yeah, I've been climbing kind of bigger adventures a lot with Jeff over the past 5 or 6 years or so. And some of the places that I've climbed in the past couple of years, we recently got back from Patagonia. We spent a month down there, taking off some of the big ones. Climbed El Cap a couple of times, been to Grand a few times, things of that sort. So that kind of gives you a sense of who I am. And yeah, if you're ever coming towards New York City, reach out.
Brian's always good for a beer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're drinking, beer?
No, just on iced tea. Yeah.
So
I should crack one open.
Okay. So apparently I'm the real deal. Just and what that means is, I guess, just that I've been climbing for a while. I started climbing when I was 20 years old. I'm 45 now, so 25 years of climbing behind me. I started guiding in 2002 for Eggs and Mountain Guides and worked there, taking people up and down the Grand Teton and some of the classic rock routes out there for 16 years. And then kind of thought, well, like put on a solid, half of a career here. Why don't I go someplace that's a little bit different? And so Chamonix, being the mecca of alpine climbing in the Alps, and really, I would argue, the world, decided to move to France. So my wife and I packed up some duffel bags and moved out here, and we just started a little family. And yeah, so that's kind of what's going on my side.
Cool. And by starting a new family, Jeff and his wife had their first kid 2 weeks ago. So
3 weeks old now. Very exciting. You might hear him. He's starting to wake up from his nap. All right, cool. So maybe I'll. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, so we'll cover just for everyone to know. So we'll cover just a very short history of Cham. We won't go too much into details, but we have to mention, as we said, it's the birthplace of modern alpine climbing. We'll show you a bit of getting around Chamonix, what gear you need to climb there, and then move on to the best part of the presentation, where Jeff and Brian will guide you through the progression of routes and classics they did in Cham. And of course, we'll cap it off with why you should go there as well. So guys, I think we can hit it off.
Cool.
So Jeff, maybe you can tell us a bit.
I'm just laughing at all these people that are saying commiserations on the lack of sleep, and someone else is saying the first 18 years the worst. I had 2 hours of sleep last night and still managed to squeak a grade 4 in this morning. So if my eyes get a little droopy, forgive me. Chamonix and the birthplace of alpinism. So I think that's really there's so many things that kind of identify this place, but it really is the foundation of mountaineering. Mont Blanc was first climbed in 1786. I think by the dude on the right there in the photo, in the statue, leading up another guy who's on another statue. And basically with that, it opened up the age of mountaineering. Really picked up in the mid 1800s, really got going in, by the 1850s to the 1870s, like the golden age of alpine climbing. Everyone was trying to get up to the summit of every peak in the Alps. And those guys, the guides were a big part of what made that happen. They're the guys with the expertise, local knowledge, knew how to get people around. And coincidentally, Chamonix is also has the oldest guide service in the world. So this is kind of where it all started. Not to mention the legends of the sports. Everyone take a look at those 3 images. One of them is a giveaway, but if you can name all 3, you can save that for later, and we'll bring it up in Q&A. And anyone who knows the answer, I'll buy them a beer the next time I see them in Chamonix. All right.
Cool. Yeah, so In terms of like getting around, so when I first started climbing, anywhere that wasn't in the Northeast United States seemed like a far away, an exotic place, and Chamonix was on that list, of course. But it's a lot closer than it seems. It's about an hour from the Geneva airport. I fly direct normally from New York when I go there. I highly recommend going direct and not transferring in Casablanca because they're going to lose your bags. But to get there, my personal best, one day, I think it was last year, I was in a meeting in Manhattan, and then 18 hours later, we were roping up on a climb in Chamonix. So it's pretty easy to get to. I can take buses right from town, and you can even rent gear in town if you are there for a shorter trip or only want to do carry-on, things of that sort. And to give a sense of like what we're going to be talking about. So this is a pretty overwhelming picture, but this is like gives a sense of the Mont Blanc Massif. So Mont Blanc being the tallest mountain in Western Europe, kind of sitting above everything. The town of Chamonix is down on this side in France. And there's a cable car you can take right up to the Guide Midi. And then the other side of the range is Courmayeur in Italy. And from there, you can also take a lift straight up to Hellbrunner, the station up there. And all the climbs that we're going to be talking about are in this area, all about, they're all either day climbs or 2 to 3 day climbs from these lifts. So a huge perk of this area is that you don't have to do 3,800 meters of elevation gain to get to the climbing. You can take the lifts up, be on the glacier in no time, and be climbing in this type of terrain. And then one popular thing too that you can do is kind of going across the range itself, either starting in Courmayeur and working across to Chamonix or vice versa. And there's a tunnel that goes right underneath the mountain to get back and forth. You can take buses to get around a lot easier than like public transportation on this side of the pond. Just to give a sense of like how a lot of people might climb there, especially if you're visiting. So this is what my first 3 days in the mountains looked like. So this was the day I flew in overnight, landed in the morning, met Jeff at the airport, and then took a lift up late morning, repacked our bags, and we climbed the Cosmicaret. Really classic climbs that we'll talk a little more with some better pictures in a bit. I spent the night at the Cosmic Hut, probably the biggest hut in the range, or one of them. Had dinner and beers there. Didn't have to carry anything up ourselves because you have everything right up in the mountains. Pretty sweet. Second day of the trip, did a 9-pitch 510 on Point La Chenelle. Beautiful rock climbing. Splitter granite, great cracks, great features. From there, crossed over to Italy. So at this point, we've crossed the border. Spent the night at Hellbrunner up at the Torino hut up there. And on the third day, after some acclimatization over the past few, we climbed my first 4,000 meter summit of the trip, which is the Dent des Jean, with a really classic, beautiful spire in the range and one of the classic summits of the area. So this is what 3 days outside, 3 days from New York City, this is what I was able to accomplish on a trip like this. And then a question that comes up a lot is like, what do you actually need to bring to a place like this? And I would say it's basically, even a 3-day trip like that, this is actually from the first day of that trip. So you can get a sense of what's required. And it's basically your standard Alpine kit. So standard puffy, hard shell, ice axe, trekking poles, no real surprises there. On this one, we brought rock shoes. Some of the routes you're in boots, of course. Basic multi-pitch climbing kit. You're on glaciated terrain, so crevasse rescue kit's a must just to be out in that area. Boots and crampons are also a must because you are going to be crossing glaciers to get the vast majority of the climbs. But again, that's something you could always rent in town if it's not part of your normal kit. Ropes, rack, things that are pretty expected. Very bright glacier sunscreen, and keep everything in about a 30-liter pack. I think what's most notable for most trips people take, you're not spending overnights on the climb or on the glacier for most people, and because of that, you can stay in the huts. You don't need to bring lots of food. You're not bringing a stove. You're not bringing a tent, and it's a much lighter kit than what we had in Patagonia, for example, because there's no lifts there. Jeff, anything you want to elaborate on the gear side of things?
Yeah, no, that's pretty complete, and basically everything you need to walk on the glacier, everything you need to do one of the climbs that's on your agenda, plus like toothbrush, sleeping bag liner for the huts. And what's cool about the huts is they provide, bunks, blankets, and food, and it kind of makes for civilized travel up in the high mountains.
Cool. So yeah, so I think we want to get into some pictures, some of the classic routes, and yeah, drop questions into the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. But yeah, Jeff, why don't you tell us about one of the classics?
Yeah, so I mean, I get asked this a lot of times. What are the classic routes around Chamonix? And the truth is that there's so many, it'd be hard to list them all or talk about them all. But the Arête Cosmiques, which there's a picture of Brian here on here, and then also the slides before, is definitely one of the classic introductory alpine routes in Chamonix. One of the things that makes it so special is that it's right off the Aiguille du Midi. It's really good to access. It takes about an hour to walk down off from the tram to the base of the route, and then probably 3 to 4 hours to climb it, and then take your time to shuttle up and down on the teleferique, the tramway. And there you have a pretty wonderful day of alpine climbing. It's a great introduction to climbing in boots. It's yeah, and the other cool thing about it is this photo you're looking at, which is from one of the terraces of the Aiguille du Midi station, is that it's at 12,000, I think 800 feet. It's great place to go get some acclimatization. And then in addition, as you can see from these photos, there's like so much around you out there to do. We were just talking about the Sherry Couloir, which is on that, right over there. And then there's ice routes up the middle. There's some rock routes if you hike down the glacier and around the corner to the right. You can see a track up the middle of that image, which is the climbing route up the Mont Blanc to Tacoul, and how some people get to Mont Blanc via the Tourmont route. So there's this tremendous accessibility to the alpine realm, and really a lot of different routes that you can do up there.
Cool. Yeah, and then one thing, especially in this route in particular, you could, from town, take the first lift up, climb this route in a pretty casual style, and be down in town for a late lunch. It's like you can truly make this a day climb or part of your optimization for getting higher and higher into the range.
Exactly.
Cool. So this one, so roughly the order of our presentation is, kind of moving up through the grades a bit. So this is the Dent du Géant, a small step higher than the Cosmique Arête. It's an AD rating in the Alpine scale, roughly like a 5.7 or a 4. And this one's a bit bigger. It's this spire in the center. It's kind of the best picture I had, unfortunately. But a bit larger, 350 meters vert. When we did it, maybe about 10 hours, maybe a bit less. But now we're getting over 4,000 meters. So we're really getting up into the mountains here. And this is the conditions we had. So Jeff took this picture looking down at me. I hear the views from the top are phenomenal, but haven't seen them yet. But we did summit. And then, so what's we can see here, we were in not really a storm, but system really moving in, and really made the best of a day that probably scared a lot of people away. And one thing that really let us do that is we started at the Torino hut, so we were only about an hour and a half from the base of the route. We had good weather forecasts. That's something that's really important in the mountains to know what's coming and what you're getting yourself into. And even with that, we knew the storm system was coming. We knew it wasn't going to be that bad, and we knew it was something we can climb through. So when we summited, this is what our view from. So the Dent du Géant has 2 little summits. This is from, I'm not sure which one of them, but this is the conditions we were in. So not your optimal climbing conditions, but still had an excellent day in the mountains, despite the weather we were dealing with.
Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
So yeah, I just want to ask Jeff, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the weather conditions in Cham, and maybe if you're coming for a week, what can you expect in terms of good, bad weather?
Sure. And in fact, like this image, Brian and I have been enjoying beautiful sunshine for the last few days, and then this morning, the clouds rolled in, and the weather was forecasted to build around 3 p.m. So we went for the summit. Interestingly enough, everyone else turned around, and so we were the only folks on the summit that day. And there was a little static electricity up there, but it was actually not bad conditions. I mean, I've definitely seen worse, but it's also kind of sporting. It reminds you of where you are, and admittedly, that view is actually one of the best in the entire range. So I guess, Brian, you're gonna have to go back up there and do it again.
I'll come back. Yeah.
But regarding the weather, I would say I don't know, I kind of classify it during the summertime as 70% good, 30% unstable weather. And, so if you come out for a week, maybe expect 4 or 5 good days of climbing. And then, there's probably going to be a day or two of rain mixed in. And I usually try to work that in with folks' agendas, like especially folks from traveling from the US, often book me for a week, and then I'll just block out that time period and try to, make the most of that time while they're in town. And yeah, and one thing that's interesting about the area is, we have this, essentially I live right underneath the largest peak in the Alps, Mont Blanc, at 15,800 feet tall, and it acts as a really good interrupter for the storms. And so it might be raining here in France because we're on the stormward side. But then if you go through the tunnel into Italy, you're on the leeward side of the storm, and it could be dry over there. Drive an hour down valley, you could go sport climbing, do 10 pitch routes on the Corno de Maccabe over by some old medieval forts. There's so much to do. It's really cool.
Cool. So yeah, back to some good weather climbing. Jeff, you want to talk about this one?
Sure. So here we're looking at the Arête de Papillon. It's one of my favorites. Kind of introduction to alpine climbing. Maybe not at an easy level. There are crux moves around 5.8 in difficulty, but a lot of 5.6, 5.7 climbing on this particular ridge route. Folks that are good climbers, I would suggest climbing their boots like Brian's wearing there, or if you're kind of more of a novice climber, you could wear your rock shoes. But this is about an hour approach from the mid station of the Guide de Midi, and it's just this beautiful location, wonderful granite, some of the best rock in the range, and takes you along this like stunning, I would say 1,000-foot tall and quite long ridge, with a handful of crux sections. And what's kind of cool about this particular day is, I think again Brian had just showed up the night before, and so we did a gear sort in the morning, hopped on a noon tram, and then climbed the Guide de Papillon and probably passed 3 or 4 parties along the way. We were kind of clipping along, climbing together. And then we decided to go up to the Guide de Pain, which is where this photo is from, which is another peak, another 1,000 feet above the Papillon. And that took another 3 hours. So it took us 3 hours to do the first part, 3 hours to do the second. Now it's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And took us another 3 hours to get down. And we actually started running into other parties out there that were still completing the Papillon Ridge. So something can be said for, style of climbing experience. Anyway.
And Jeff, you mentioned when we talked about this presentation before, that on climbs like this, you can also see the not say importance, but the potential benefits of having a guide versus not having a guide and the speed of movement. Maybe you can tell us a bit of.
Yeah, that's actually what I was discussing is a great example of that. It's funny because we pass all these people coming up, and then we started passing them again on the way out, and a lot of them were walking back down to town because they completely underestimated the length of the route and the difficulty. Although it's, if you're experienced moving through alpine terrain, it's not that difficult and it's not that long, but the tactics that they were using were slow for that kind of terrain. So a lot of them, actually, many of them, walked down in the dark, and we had planned to come down late. We actually left bivy gear near the base and then showed up, made a supper with the jet boil, crawled in our sleeping bags, and then the very next morning at about about 2 o'clock
early.
So that one of the goes up that face behind us. And so something can be said for having an expert on the team, and just having knowledge of how to move through the mountains and what's in condition, how to find your way on the routes, et cetera, et cetera. And that is one reason to hire a local guide, without a doubt. I think that's why most people do it.
Yeah, I think just to build on that too, a lot of the way that Jeff and I have been climbing a bunch together. Actually, I've counted up, and we've been on 10 different trips together, and we've been, put a lot of mileage in, probably 50 or more days together climbing. And having a strong partner or someone you'd really know how they climb really lets you move a lot faster. So even though this two route, when Jeff was saying we were passing people that were slow, they were pitching out every pitch. And some of those pitches were just fourth class, but we simul climbed most of it. We probably did the whole thing in a 3 or 4 pitch, giant blocks. But we also know how each other climbs. We know when there's cruxes, we know how to respond to that. And that lets us move at like a really efficient way. And also like Jeff, having known the terrain a lot better than I do, I don't slimy climb at the gunks. That'd be like pretty horrifying. But like, being with someone who knows the terrain really well can help you move in that type of manner and really get a lot more out of your trip. Cool.
I think we go more into detail on that in the Q&A, actually, if people.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah. So, so kind of another climb that we've done. This one we did this past year. Was this past? Yeah, last year. And this is a step up in difficulty for sure. This is the Kufner Ridge on up to Mont Blanc. And when we did this route, we actually continued on and summited Mont Blanc on the same push, and basically made a 3-day trip out of it. But I think most people do it in about 2. And this, much more of an alpine, environment. No one was in rock shoes in this on this route. You're crossing snow, you're crossing, you're swinging tools, double tools for ice, rock climbing, 5-7 climbing in crampons at 4,000 meters. So, pretty different terrain, but this is something that, like a route like this isn't something that I would have jumped on with Jeff, or he wouldn't have let me jump on with him, on our first trip. This is something that we really worked up towards, a route of this magnitude. So I think it's something to be said about like spending a lot of time with a strong partner, with someone who wants to like have the same type of objectives as you. And because of this, we were able to take this climb off. We had spent several days up in the mountains prior, acclimatizing, and made a really fun day out of a really huge route. Another really cool thing on this one was there were some guides that were out training that day, and we passed them on the climb. And it's like, oh, that's how you know you're doing pretty good, when you're like passing groups of guides together, or like moving really well as a team. So the Kufner was a really exciting route, and this is up getting right to the top of it, right on the top of Mont Blanc. Really beautiful setting, and one I was like super proud of. But another thing on this climb too, like Jeff mentioned, the weather, and how having knowledge of the weather and the conditions in the mountains can really help you make the best call for like what your options are. And when we went on this trip, we had a lot of different options where to climb. We were thinking of maybe doing the north face of the Drew. We were looking at Nominata on Mont Blanc, and the conditions weren't right in those places. But the Kufner, being in the aspect it was, the way the weather was moving the previous few days, really made this like the optimal climb to do, and we had a great time doing it.
Indeed. Yeah. Here's a little video of that Brian took from the summit of Mont Blanc, or close to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving up towards Mont Blanc. Yeah. I
think we stopped to put our puffies on there.
Yeah.
The wind was kind of howling around the ridge. That's to the Mont Blanc.
Yeah, it's a really neat link up to be able to do Monet and Mont Blanc on the same push. When we got to the top of Monet, I think Jeff was like, "Are you sure you want to keep going? It's a long ways to go." But yeah, you can tell us a little more about what climbing Mont Blanc's like. It's a pretty big one.
Yeah, Jeff, maybe. Sorry if I interrupted, but maybe you can tell us also about like the importance of acclimatization. I know you mentioned that as well a few times when we talked. So maybe this is a good point. Yeah.
And without a doubt, if you're going to climb Mont Blanc, for example, 4,800 meters, 15,000, almost 16,000 feet, you really do need some acclimatization above 3,000 or 4,000 meters if you can get it on that trip. And, that was interesting. Yeah, and so anyone that wants to get up on the high peaks, whether it be the Matterhorn or Mont Blanc or whatever, I would strongly not recommend that they just go straight to the peak. You're not going to have a great experience. You're going to be dragging your feet. It's going to be hard to move efficiently. Weather can become an issue. And so often I'll, suggest that people do maybe one of us should get muted. To do a 4,000 meter peak first. So in the case of this trip, we didn't do that. We climbed the Papillon. We went up the Friendo up to 3,800 meters, spent the night at the Cosmique's hut, which is really helpful for acclimatization. And then we went over and did the Grand Capasson, which is also right around there, 3,800 meters. And then came back down and had, let the weather go through. There was a stormy day, and we washed clothes and got ready for another push. And that's when we saw this window for the Kufner. So basically you can see how like spending time up high and then like knowing what your goals are or potential goals are can really help you and performing well up high when the opportunity presents itself. I hope that makes sense. Hit me up in questions and answers if it doesn't. But yeah, we had this fun climb on Mont Blanc. It was cool because we started by taking a bus through the tunnel and taking the teleferique up on the Italian side, spent the night in a bivvy hut, climbed the Kofner Ridge on Mont Blanc, and then climbed up and over to the top of Mont Blanc, and then we walked down the French side. And Mont Blanc's a special beast because it is the highest peak in the Alps. A lot of people want to climb it. I would say like most people are like, oh, I want to climb Mont Blanc. And because of that, it's kind of hard to get reservations. It's hard to get your nose in the door to even get on the route in the first place. And there's only a few options from the French side. Doing it a different way was really cool because we could actually, you know, like on this trip, we actually had almost no Serac hazard. We walked under a Serac for 5 minutes versus like on the Tourmont, you're under Serac hazard for like 2 or 3 hours. On the standard route, on the Gouture, you're under, you have to cross the Great Couloir, which always has stones coming down it. There are some risks involved. And so from that perspective, it was also nice just to like do some different routes and we walked from this point, we actually walked all the way back into town with a night at the Grand Mullet hut. It was a 10-hour walk down from the summit to town. Anyway, let's move along. Oh, and Brian fell in a crevasse. Not completely, but yeah, that's the way down down the Grand Mullet actually, and you can see that in fact there is some Serac hazard there.
Moving on, guys. I mean,
Brian's trying to unmute himself.
Okay, Brian muted. Sorry, Brian. Figured that out.
Yeah.
Cool. There we go.
Hey Brian, sorry for I didn't know you.
No problem.
Yeah. Let's talk about the mountain huts of Cham. That's a great one.
Yeah, sure. So this is one of the big perks of going to a place like this. You don't have beautiful mountain huts up in the Tetons or in the Pacific Northwest to the extent that you would here. So there's about 60 something huts scattered throughout the range, and we've set it a handful together. There's like a lot more to explore, of course. And they range from ones like the Grand Mullet, I'll show some pictures in a second, to ones that are much more rugged, that might just be places to bivvy. But even with that, like you're not bringing a tent. You don't have to worry about having as warm a sleeping bag. So you're able to stay in these pretty beautiful places right up in the mountains. And even like within these huts, so the Grand Mullet was a really cool one. We hit this one on the way coming down from Mont Blanc. And Ludo, the hut keeper, makes his own beer up there that you can buy. They make food for you. It's a place to stay. Met some really interesting people and really great views, from a place like this that you don't have to carry much stuff. So yeah, of course, yeah, gotta have the beer picture. And then yeah, so this is like what it's like being in there. You get food made for you, water to drink. You don't have to be carrying all that stuff up, and yeah, it really adds to the experience in a way that you don't get in a lot of places in the world.
Awesome. So, and then we mentioned earlier the Friendo Spur, which is a route that we actually did this route kind of in between a couple other routes between the Papillon and we'll show some more pictures of what we did after that. But the Friendo I think is really cool. We threw this in here because this is a little bit more of an advanced climb, but it's something to aspire to. And I think it shows really the potential of the objectives in Chamonix, which are, mixed Alpine routes. So climbing on rock, climbing on snow, potentially climbing on ice. And really what the essence of this is skill blending. Like, how is your rock climbing technique? Great. So you can climb, let's say you can climb like 5'9" on rock. How do you do in boots? What's your technique in boots? And it might be the same or it might be different based on your experience level. So learning how to blend your skills from one discipline or, one format to another, and then mixing in some snow and some ice and really moving over the ground. This route is 5.8 in difficulty. It was climbed in the 30s, and it's 4,000 feet tall. So it's actually, that wall is higher than Mont Blanc. And I think it took us 12 hours to climb that thing. A lot of people
it's pretty big.
Bivvy halfway up it. But just just gives you an idea of something else too. We got a little video here. Brian and I have been climbing together for quite a while, so our relationship is very advanced, I would say, for a client guide relationship. And, you know, the truth is we're also quite good friends at this point. We've done so much together. And you can see Brian led this pitch. He's blowing me up, so that's kind of cool. But that's also what it takes to, you know, like one of Brian's goals was to, whether it be climb something in Patagonia or getting into some of the greater ranges. And he's really interested in developing skills beyond normal for him. So we've also been working on this together, like him leading pitches and learning how to move more efficiently in alpine terrain, recognizing good belay stances. It's been a progression, like you said, 10 trips, 7 years of climbing.
Yeah, I think that this one, like when I did this climb, I remember getting to the top and like telling you, I think this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And
exactly.
But I think this was also so like for the past few years, one of my big goals was to do some big climbs in Patagonia, and Jeff kind of helped me with the progression of like training and climbs to, you know, work up to that. And this was one of the ones that was on the list, and I think pretty comparable to, you know, a couple of the routes that we did down there. We did the Willens on Point Snow, a pretty major mountain in the range, and I think this, you know, the Friendo in some ways was pretty comparable to a route like that.
Indeed.
Cool. I think we got a heart stuck on the screen, but one last climb I want to talk about. So this is getting much more into like the technical rock range. So we climbed the Swiss route in the Grand Cap. This is a TD rating, so it's getting, you know, even more advanced. And this was in like the 510, 6A plus range. And I think, you know, if you were to compare it to something stateside, you might say it's a lot like Serenity Suns in Yosemite. I think I had 6 or 7 pitches of 510 on it. You know, but again, you're in the Alpine. You're taking your boots off at the base and putting rock shoes on and moving up. And this is like really beautiful setting. This is about a 12-hour trip. We, you know, moved at a pretty good pace. I don't think we were rushing by any means. Went with another friend of ours, and yeah, had just an incredible day out in the mountains rock climbing. In something that's, you know, nothing like what you get back home. That's for sure. And yeah, Grand Cap was definitely one of the highlights in terms of like the technical rock climbing I've done in the range. And yeah, probably one of my favorite climbs I've ever done. But even here, so again, this is the hardest route that we're talking about. But in that like 510 range, but also in the Grand Cap, there's, you know, routes up to around probably low 513. You know, if you're a real crusher, there's a lot more for you to do out there. Someone's accepting. I'll hit decline. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and in fact, as I recall, that day, Mark, we did the climb, and Mark even ran back to the himself and caught the last teleferique down, or even the second to last, I believe. I don't know if Mark's listening in, but yeah, that was worthy. I think I owe him still a beer for that one. We were lazy. We walked an hour to the Torino hut and had spaghetti for dinner and drank glasses of beer, and then actually took a teleferique home in the morning. It was pretty civilized. That was after a 3-day romp. We were actually, I would say we were pretty well tired, and we needed a little rest, and coincidentally the weather shifted and we sat around for a few days, and then that's when we did the Kufner afterwards. That was a big part of our acclimatization program. Let's be clear, like to climb the Kufner 5.7, yeah, you should be climbing, I would say 5.8 in your rock shoes and feeling comfortable in cracks and stuff to be able to do like 5.6 or 5.7 in boots and crampons. You don't need to be a 5.10 climber to do that route. But the fitness, I think, is evident. Like you do need to be able to move and be cardiovascularly fit. And obviously the acclimatization is a big part of that as well. So, so one thing we wanted to bring up is, you know, just remember that it's, you know, this is a big venue. And I think that's what attracts people out here. And what's important, I think, is just that you come into it with some degree of skills. And I get asked a fair bit about like, you know, doing glacier training or doing alpine rock training to help people gain these skills. And it's definitely possible to build these up on your own. You just, you know, want to get out with a good mentor or professional to kind of show you the ropes and steer you in the right direction. But I've always believed that, you know, a day spent with a guide in the mountains can save you 10 days of like climbing with folks that don't have an agenda. You know, like having a focused learning environment is really helpful. And sometimes, you know, you just hire a guide and go out and do it anyway. You know, you don't necessarily need to learn the things, although obviously if you're going to move through terrain like this, your guide will want you to have enough skills to at least stop a crevasse fall and whip out your cell phone and call the PGHM to pull them out. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, people are asking about other things to do around Chamonix, and I think that's worth pointing out too. If you're going to spend a week here and you do get weathered out, this is the sunny crag in Italy that I was talking about, and just around the corner from there, there's like 12-pitch rock routes. This was actually on a ski trip that Brian was skiing with one of the founders of 57 Hours, and we just went climbing for a day in Italy and ate pizza. It was fantastic. They have good coffee too. Yeah, and there's actually a nice climbing venue nearby. There's you can do via ferratas, you can go paragliding, you can, I mean, the list can actually get pretty long. There's some excellent hiking, trail running, mountain biking. Yeah, it's kind of a almost, you could say, an extreme sports mecca. Mm-hmm. And then finally, yeah, Brian, why don't you finish it off?
Sure, yeah. And of course, yeah, I mean, France is known for its food. Yeah, great wine, okay beer, yeah, great food. There's like, I think in town there's like a Michelin star restaurant in Chamonix, but also, yeah, things not at that price point. But yeah, I think we've had a great time, you know, spending our evenings in town or in the areas around and kind of exploring. And like Jeff mentioned, even going into Italy, you're really close, and it's a pretty different culture and different cuisine over there. We've had a lot of like great meals on that side of the mountain too.
Totally.
And then, yeah, so I think, yeah, just to say, you know, why you should go. I think, like, you know, huge list, obviously, the list goes on forever. But to me, it's that there's like these great climbs at every level, whether it's your first time in the mountains and, you know, you go and try to do Cosmica Ret, or you want to be like, you know, climbing, you know, the Bonatti Gigo on the Grand Cap, you know, in the 512 range. There's something for everybody. And then also, yeah, I'm a huge fan of these, you know, staying in the huts, not having to do these giant approaches, even though that, you know, can add to fun sometimes. But there's just so much access to such great terrain. It's a pretty beautiful place.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well,
so, yeah.
If you don't, before we get into the Q&A, I just want to, and we're gonna actually do questions and answers, and Perry is going to lead this, but I think it's just so awesome that all these people showed up, and I've been falling behind on the group chat, but hold on to those questions. And yeah, here we go.
Cool.
All right, everyone. So we'll try to answer all the questions, and if not, Jeff will reach out later. So thank you guys for the great presentation. Really love the, I mean, everybody loved the images and everything. People are even asking if they can have the presentation as well. But please know, everybody will get the recording. It will be published on YouTube tomorrow, and you'll get an email with everything. And let's just go on with the questions and kick off as much as we can. So
yeah, and before we start, Perry, so let me just, because there's some people that joined after we started this thing. Alps, this is not involved with 57 Hours, but a few of my sponsors threw some swag in. So this is like a proper like presentation. And so I do have, Camp is going to send someone a set of 4 Alpine draws and a Nano carabiner rack pack. These carabiners are the best in the world. They're the lightest and they work perfectly. And then Adidas has offered to chip in a pair of either 510 or Adidas shoes, which might even include climbing shoes. So for everyone here, stick around at the end. We're going to get everyone's emails. And then what I'm going to do is run it through like a raffle digital chooser to pick out 3 folks to win something, and we'll send it to you. The catch is, unfortunately, my sponsors are in the US, so we can only send it to US addresses. Sorry, Ken, if you win, but we can figure it out too. If someone's in Europe and they end up winning, I'd be happy to bring it back to France with me, and I'll send it along, or I'll just send you these ones and get some new ones for myself. All right. Start it off.
All right, let's start off. We had a question early in the presentation, and this is one for you, Jeff, is if you had any close calls in like on the 4,000 meter elevation terrain, and what did you do?
Yeah, you know, I was a guide in the Tetons for 16 years. They're kind of notorious for getting afternoon lightning storms. So I have been touched by electricity a few times. In fact, that day that Brian and I climbed the Dent de Géant, you know, like there was a little static electricity in the air, but mostly that's the challenge. It's funny, as much as the Mont Blanc Massif is famed for its lightning storms, we have such good weather forecasts now that we don't really need to poke our noses up there at that time. We can see them coming from a few days away. And so with those good weather forecasts, it kind of takes the weather out of the equation, and or at least the weather problems, the significant ones, out of the equation. We can plan around those. And so then, like around the Alps, yeah, these are big mountains. They have, there's definitely some serac hazards, rockfall hazards. And these are things that, as guides, we're thinking about all the time, trying to really stay in tune with the mountains. There's no, I haven't had any significant close calls to speak of, and I'm really wishing for a piece of wood to knock on right now. But yeah, they can happen. Certainly they happen more to people that aren't as aware of what's going on in the mountains, or, just don't have that experience or time in the mountains. And so that is one reason to spend some time with a professional, or someone with a strong background, because they will definitely be more alert to what's going on. I think that a good mentor, or potentially a guide, can help you get around those issues.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to know you're always safe. Brian, we have, and I think it's best you maybe answer that, as you were the one doing it. It's basically about the training required for climbs like this. I again have to unmute you, sorry.
Cool. Sorry about that. Of course, it's like the 1 hour of the week when my parents' lawn is being mowed. So sorry about that. That's life,
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So yeah, training. So I train in a few different ways. Been a bit lazy the past few weeks. I'm putting on the COVID-19, but for a trip like this, like when we went and climbed the Kufner, or when we climbed to Patagonia, kind of put the same type of training in. And at the time, I was climbing the 510 range. I'm not overly training my rock climbing. I'm actually probably not putting too much focus on that, just because that takes away from my time to really get cardiovascularly fit. So it's really important to have strong legs, strong core, things like that going to the mountains. So I think, like when I was training for trips like that, I was probably running 22, 23-minute 5Ks as like my morning runs. So like in that level of fitness, and yeah, being pretty comfortable, to be able to run like a half marathon or something like that wouldn't be, it would be hard for me, but not impossible. So that's like the level of training that I was at. So yeah, lots of running, lots of cross training, Stairmaster with boots and a pack on. I look like the idiot at the gym doing that, but that's kind of what let me get to that level.
Thanks. Then we have a question about, and this is Jeff, probably for you, is how does the booking the huts work? How easy it is? How much in advance do you have to do it? And maybe even the cost of it.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a can of worms. And honestly, like as a guide, I kind of stray away from Mont Blanc for that very reason, because Mont Blanc is literally already booked for the entire summer. There's a day when they open up the bookings to the professionals, to the guides, and then to the public shortly thereafter, as I recall. And there's like this mad race and like hours of refreshing your screens to like get on and book your Mont Blanc huts. And honestly, yeah, it's beyond my scope. If I have a guest that's really interested in climbing Mont Blanc, probably what I would do is choose a route that's not the traditional, mostly to get away from the crowding issues, and also generally steer them into like what I would say is the good seasons, which would be like June or September, because July and August, it's so warm now. Got rockfall issues, rackfall issues, and crowding issues, and weather. It's kind of the perfect storm. Mont Blanc's kind of the exception to that, though. As you can see, like Brian and I running around the mountains here, often not booking the huts too far in advance. But it really depends on the objective. Like, unfortunately, there's not a single like right answer for that. It just depends. Depends on which hut you want to go to, what time of year, and what your objective is as to how hard it is to get it booked. Yeah.
Cool. And then maybe we can follow up, Jeff, with you as well. We have a person asking maybe a more general question, not related only to Chamonix, but what are the key, what is the most important thing to consider when hiring a guide? So I'm not sure, maybe you both can answer this, but it is an interesting question. So what should a person be careful and look for in a guide? Maybe you both could answer this.
Want me to go first? Sure.
Yeah, sure.
It's Brian.
Yeah. So one thing is that in Europe, or in the area that Jeff's guiding, you have to be certified. You have to be IFMGA. It's a different acronym in other languages, but there are going to be people that are trying to bootleg guide and stuff there, and you're just not getting that level of training and quality with people who are doing that. So that level of certification is really important. Not as many people have that on the US side of things. So you do have people that are, not that experienced guiding people, and in situations where they might not have the experience enough to teach them really what they should be doing outside of normal circumstances. But what I look for, I've come with Jeff, I've come with other guys as well, really people that have similar goals as me. I've gone with guides for 1-day trips if I'm traveling and that's what I want to do for a day. That's one thing. But to go with someone like Jeff and say hey, I want to work up to this level of skill, I want to climb routes like the Friendo and things like that. I want to climb with someone who's equally excited to do that type of thing, and kind of help me through the process. All of these routes, even climbing in Chamonix, Jeff and I have been climbing for 3 or 4 years before that. So we kind of had this whole progression. We climbed really well together over time. So yeah, kind of looking for something long-term in terms of objectives, what I would say is most important for me.
Yeah, now Brian's really interested in climbing some peaks in the Himalaya. So we've been talking about that and essentially trying to come up with a plan and something interesting to do. I mean, we've done so much together that we don't necessarily need to go to a trade route where all the lines are fixed. We can actually climb Alpine style quite efficiently together, and maybe it's time to pick a mountain off the beaten path and go have a proper out in the middle of nowhere adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. And then following up on choosing a guide, we have a person asking about the prices as well. So let's say somebody's booking you for a week. What is the average cost of that, Jeff?
The prices, I do price some guides here in Europe just price on the day, but I think they still will. It depends on your day. If it's a 6 or 8 hour day versus a 12 or 14 hour day, obviously the price is going to be different. Yeah, and I think they, generally speaking, rates probably start around €450 per day. For the Swiss Alps, with the Swiss guides, they're charging between 600 and 800 francs per day, just pretty much for everything. Matterhorn's 1,000 francs for a day with a guide. I charge close to the same rate. I think I charge 1,200, basically 600 per day times 2, but I spend 2 days with my guests instead of just meeting them at the hut and climbing with them the following morning. So it depends. Usually I work with individuals on a one-to-one basis, but yeah, it depends on the objective, it depends on the time of year. I don't have a specific answer.
No, it's understood. So
maybe average $500 a day, that's probably pretty fair. Covers, but it varies. I'll bring the price down for a day of rock climbing in the valley versus climbing the Kufner Ridge on Mont Blanc. Obviously 2 very different objectives. And yeah, and there is one question. Maybe we could hit up David Hewitt's question, Peritza, which was about COVID. This is probably on a lot of people's minds. Do you mind if I address that real quick?
Yeah, it was in my plan as well, but let's jump right on it.
Sorry to
No, it's all good. Go for it.
But yeah, it's definitely an issue that we're talking about around the world right now, and I'm sure every one of us has this on the forefront of our mind. And so with regards to that, there's some good questions. So how are we navigating the virus? For example, wearing our masks when we're within 2 meters of our guests. I think that's where one thing starts. So anytime we're like at a blaze stance or sitting down and having lunch together, we'll pop our masks on. Of course, you can't eat lunch with a mask on. So maybe then it's important to move 3 meters apart and get a little distance just in case one of us was carrying the virus, so we don't give it to the other person. I think keeping in small pods. So spending, if I'm going to climb with someone, I'm going to allow myself to be closer to them, but I'm still going to really be careful about spending time with other people. I was climbing a route on the south face of the Guide Midi today, and this guy's coming up behind me, and I basically just told him, like, yeah, you can make a belay down there, can't you? I like pretty much told him not to join my stance. I'm like, I'm just trying to like let our group spread apart a little bit so we're not all jammed on top of each other at every belay stance. And this guy, Oscar from Sweden, was great. He was like, oh yeah, no, you know what? No big deal. And then in another stance, we like created a way for him to use the ledge below us rather than joining us. So these are the things that we're thinking about. Riding the Guide Midi, they're at half capacity. They require masks. They're using heat monitors. So that kind of helps. I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. The question about the huts is challenging because they're typically dorm rooms. And so in my mind, well, I'm definitely going to aim towards more day trips. And if we want to do an overnight trip, we're really going to focus our energy on like, okay, we're going to allow ourselves to get exposed for one night at a hut. And maybe we'll still eat outside, or maybe we can go someplace where we can set up a tent outside of the hut and still use the hut food. I don't know. I'm still kind of playing with that. But without a doubt, I'm working with my guests on a one-on-one basis. And in fact, my next trip, we decided just to go camp instead of use the hut. Like, we're going to go camp probably 20 minutes from a hut. And just because we can, why not? I think it's good to be a little conservative. And
are you able to start working now?
Yeah, we're allowed to work right now in France. So I work for, I'm a member of the National Guides Union in France. That's how I get my insurance for my trips. And, as a member, I get some benefits. And so we're definitely allowed to work, but we're only allowed to work under the parameters that the government allows us. So they're asking right now that we don't do overnights in the mountains. So I can't do an overnight trip. I can't use the bivouacs. We are allowed to do multi-pitch. We're not allowed to cross the borders right now. So I can't go to Switzerland. That should change on June 15, we're expecting. But we're kind of taking it step by step. And I think it's a little bit of a moving target and just requires some flexibility and patience. For me, my biggest challenge is most of my guests come from the US. And so if people from the US aren't allowed to travel to Europe this summer, I'll be available.
All right. Cool. Well, we have a few more repeating questions both in the Google forum and the chat, so maybe we can address those as well. And one of them is about seasonality of Chamonix. So when is the best time to come for Chamonix to do either some climbing or skiing? So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I saw that. I even I think I might have sent a response. Someone was asking, like, is May a good time to come? We were climbing like beautiful rock. One guy had his t-shirt on, and it's May and we're at 12,500 feet on the south face of the Guide Midi. It was perfect conditions today. Like, you couldn't have asked for better conditions. So it's definitely possible. Really just comes down to weather. The weather tends to get better this time of year, and we're having a beautiful spring, so conditions are in. I saw tracks on the Friendo coming back down today, so the Friendo Spur is getting climbed. It's, I would think, normally a little early, but actually the conditions are perfect for it. So to summarize, I would say like May and June are great for these like more mixed routes like the Friendo that have some ice and steep snow on them, including the Kufner. May and June, I would say, is the best. And by the time July comes around, things get kind of dried out and the rockfall becomes a problem. So that's a good time to look more towards like routes like the Arête Cosmiques that's pretty much stays to the crest. You're not exposed to overhead rock issues that much. It's kind of funny. I'd have to like almost create a template of routes, but there are great alpine routes to do in the early season. And then there's kind of like, then you go towards the rock ridges and the rock faces and stuff like that in the summer, and the classic mountaineering routes for sure as well. And then in the autumn, sometimes the ice comes back in and you can get back on those mixed routes. Like, for example, I climbed the north face of the Agra once in October, like brilliant conditions. And so that's part of it's just keeping your finger on the pulse and being flexible. But, you know, if you are making a trip, I'm pretty stoked to like help people find what's in condition well. And you know, like part of it, I guess, is just having the mentality of like, don't be single-minded in your objective. Rather than that, show up and see what's good and have fun with it. If that makes any sense. And I think that's one reason why Brian and I have climbed so much together is he's incredibly flexible in that way. He's like, well, I don't know, what's good? What should we do? And I'm like, well, this route's in condition. Let's go do it. And that makes sense.
Yeah, I think all the big trips we've done together, we always went in with like a list of potential things that we wanted to do and just adjusted based on that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great. That seems like, I think, Jeff, you mentioned that to me as well multiple times, being flexible with goals. I mean, it's good to have a set goal, but it's also good to have alternatives in place so you're not stuck or disappointed or whatnot. And then one other question that we also had a few times is about the impacts of climate change and on the loose rocks. So I don't know, Jeff, if you can say anything about that. Have you noticed anything that you could say that climate change is impacting the business?
Yeah, without a doubt, we're seeing more rockfall events up above 3,000 meters. Without a doubt, you have to pay attention to it. It's good to talk to your guide. But that said, like, I think a good example is there was a rockfall accident on the Matterhorn last year. It was the first time I think a guide had been killed on the Matterhorn in like 12 years, and a rock tower literally collapsed on top of him and his guests while they're underneath of it. Pretty rare event, but it caught all of us. Like, you know, we were paying attention. It was during one of the 2 hot spells last year. We had these, you know, 100-degree weather in France. All of Europe was sweltering. And of course, what that means is the ice is melting and the rocks will start letting loose. And this happened on the Cosmiques Red as well, which there's now a way around that rockfall spot. It's not a big deal. There's a couple options there. But another good example is the Dent de Géant, which when people ask me about that, I kind of have put that into the same time as Mont Blanc. Like, yeah, let's go do that in June. Let's not do that in July or August because it's too dry. The rocks are so loose. And frankly, I think there's going to be a pretty massive rockfall event in that vicinity, probably in the next few years. And as guides, this is one of the parts of our job. You know, like we obviously want to succeed and come back alive. And so we're paying close attention to what's going on in the mountains. And there's a lot of discussion amongst guides and scientists and kind of going amongst each other. I mostly just listen and take notes, but yeah, so it is having an effect. And I will say, like, the Alpine climbing season, which historically, the first time I climbed the Kufner was at the end of August. You cannot climb that mountain or that route in those conditions anymore in August. It will not happen. That was just 20 years ago. And so now June's the time. So if you have specific questions about routes and want to know good timeframes, why don't you hit me up? My email will also get shared with the group. So feel free to hit me up with questions. And I'll also be like collecting everyone's emails and say thanks and put everyone into the raffle for the gear.
Cool. Maybe we are like at 1 hour, but maybe we can have just a few more. And I would actually want one maybe to be answered more directly. So we talked about different levels. We went through the progression of climbs, but we have an interesting question. What is the absolute minimum level of a climber you need to be able to enjoy Chamonix?
Well, that's a good question. And I don't know if Jonathan's on the call today, but the gentleman that I met out in the Himalaya a few years ago came out last year, never climbed before. He was just really interested to learn about it. And so basically we spent 2 or 3 days like learning the ropes with rock climbing. And then we went up and climbed the 3,500 meter peak called the Agueda Tour. Pretty moderate peak. but a great alpine experience, awesome summit. And we actually did a little traverse over that corner of the range down into Switzerland and stayed in some Swiss huts along the way, and kind of like, and took the train back. You know, there's these great adventures. And so, you know, like Jonathan, first time climber, you know, avid hiker, that was his parameters. So I think for every individual, there's certainly something to offer. And if all you wanted to do was hike, you can hike through the Aiguille Rouge. There's a route around the Mont Blanc Massif, quite famous, the Tour de Mont Blanc. It's 115 miles, as I recall, right around there. You can do that in like 12 days and have a pretty awesome mountain experience without even like physically climbing, just trekking. So I also lead treks in the Himalaya, climbs in Africa, kind of like do stuff all around the world. And, you know, I think for all my trips, what I try to do is like figure out what these people, what my guest is most interested in, and then just put together a really neat agenda for them. You know, like, I guess I might be a little bit of a boutique guide in that regard, but I think that's the best experiences we can have, is really catering to the individuals or a specific group.
Perfect. I think it's a great question to finish this off. We'll answer. We have a few more questions left in the forum, but Jeff will get to those in an email. So thank you everyone for staying with us till the end. For those of you who started leaving out emails, so leave out the emails to...
yeah, drop your emails so I can put you in the raffle. And if you have questions that you've put on the Zoom chat, maybe we won't shut this thing down right away, and I'll try to just answer a handful of them as well, or grab your email if I can. So if you have a question, maybe like reiterate it, put your email there, and then I'll get back to you with an email.
Yeah, we'll stay on a bit more, so no problem, Jeff, there. Like, we can do that. And then for everyone to know, so the recording of this will be shared with everyone tomorrow by end of the day. You'll get contacts of Jeff, so you'll be able to ask him questions. You'll also have a link to the Chamonix climbing adventure that can be booked and asked about on 57hours.com. And we hope to see you in the next webinar soon. So we'll start to make this a series. So we plan to restart in 2 weeks time with a new webinar on, it will be a hiking one with the hidden trails of Iceland. Really good, and it's also, I would say, it will be done by a boutique guide, as Jeff said it, so who tailors things specifically, and we'll just carry on with those. So thanks everyone, leave the email, and if we can stay on a bit more to answer all the questions.
Yeah, notice that there are some folks have been asking about ski mountaineering, and I'd be willing to bet with a little arm twisting, Peritza can set up a webinar about ski mountaineering in Chamonix as well down the road, because it's actually a super cool venue for that too. I do, you know, as an IFMGA guide and living here, obviously that's a big part of my my repertoire as well. And we're actually working on offering some trips on 57 hours with regard to ski mountaineering, as well as obviously alpine climbing. And we're, you know, all this is in development. So if you're interested in that, just pay attention, and hopefully we'll have something like that going in the next few months.
Yeah, no, we have, like, we plan to do a lot more of these webinars, so it will certainly come. No worries there. There will be plenty of inspiration to come with us.
Thanks so much, everyone, for the questions and enthusiasm. There's so many comments whipping through the group chat. I cannot keep up with it.
We can't keep up.
Yeah. Specifically, if you have a question, reiterate it with your email, and I will I'll email folks, and I'll kind of go through. We're going to collect all the emails as well, so for the raffle, obviously. But I don't think I can keep up with all the questions, so I'm just going to.
Yeah, I think it's a bit
afterwards.
Let's see.
One person asked me what my favorite 4,000 meter peak is and why. That's a cool question. Man, I'd have to think about that.
We're going to say the Grand Teton. No.
And in fact, I think Brian just answered it for me. I'm biased because I've climbed the Grand probably 200 times in my life and know the mountain really well. It's like an old friend. And it's funny because it compared to the Alps, Going back in time to, I think it was the year 2000 when I moved out to the Tetons, and my buddy Matt came out with me, and we did a quick car-to-car on the complete Exum Ridge. So a 7,000 foot ascent, 2,000 feet of rock climbing at the end, up to 5.7 in difficulty. I think it took us like 14 or maybe 16 hours. And after we got to the parking lot, it's like, oh, Jeff, these are cool mountains, but they're toy mountains compared to the Alps. And that may be true. So as far as the Alpine peaks are concerned, yeah, it's a tough one. I think I've climbed about 20 of the 4,000ers in the Alps, and I think each one has its special characters. I've enjoyed the routes I've done in Mont Blanc. I've enjoyed Monte Rosa. I've enjoyed the Matterhorn. Although I've only climbed 2 routes in the Matterhorn, it'd be cool to do, be up on the North Face or climb the Zermatt Ridge as well. I really enjoyed climbing the Zinal Rothorn, which is right across the valley from the Matterhorn last year. I did that with some guests. They wanted to climb the Matterhorn, but we had that rockfall incident. So basically we decided to redirect to another peak. And the Zinal Rothorn's got better rock, not nearly as much exposure to rockfall on the route. And it was great to get on a peak that I'd never climbed before, and really enjoyed it. And it's like great climbing, and then you're looking at the Matterhorn the whole time, so you get this beautiful view. And yeah, it's hard to pick favorites. I don't think I've climbed enough or gotten to know the peaks well enough to really say. Someone said Eiger Matterhorn first choice. Ooh, tough call. I first climbed the Matterhorn in 2001. Yeah, up the Mittelegi Ridge, which I'm really fond of that route. It's a little more committing than the Matterhorn. It's an up and over, but it's not as. I don't think it's actually as difficult as the Matterhorn. It might have a slightly more difficult rating, but it's not doesn't have as much vertical, and you're at a lower elevation, so you don't have this huge aerobic fitness workout like you do on the Matterhorn. Been up also on the North Face. I think I've been on all 4 points of the Matterhorn, or excuse me, of the Eiger. And, like the North Face of the Eiger, when we climbed it in October, perfect experience, perfect conditions. Someone's asking me to talk about the experience. And admittedly, that's like another webinar. Like we should just do a presentation on the North Face of the Eiger. It's good fun. But that for me was one of my all-time favorite Alpine climbs, which had a lot to do with having a great partner and great conditions. And we actually made a commitment to like climbing the route, being safe, not using too many running blades without gear in between and stuff like that. And so it ended up I think we bivvied on the route twice. It took us 45 hours round trip. So nothing's fast like Uli climbing it in 3 hours or 2.5 hours. But it was a great experience. We got a lot of photos and really just enjoyed the camaraderie and the location. And a lot can be said for that style, get up in the mountains and enjoy them. You don't have to run through the mountains in 14 hours to have an amazing experience. You can also spend the night up there and watch the sunset.
Well, guys, and maybe one thing that I'm getting interested in as well is, do you have some goals for Chamonix as well? Do you plan to come back there? Like maybe you and Brian, are you like cooking something up for the next season?
I'm just waiting for the border to open, man. I'm ready to go.
I think if Brian was able to fly here, we'd be up on the North Face of the Drew right now.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, literally right now. And the Drass is looking a little snowy, but the Colton Mac might go. We're definitely looking at big routes like that now.
Yeah.
The Nominata is coming into shape too. Mountains are in great shape. Someone is asking about why is August not good? And I wouldn't say that it isn't good. It just depends on the routes. August is a great time to go to the Onvera Hut and go climb 25 pitch rock routes. Like that's the time. They're going to be dry, not too much snow. You can travel light. However, like the Dent de Géant has some rockfall issues, and then the route's getting really dried out. And I might go up there. I definitely wouldn't want to make a habit of it and be up there every day, although there are some guys from Courmayeur that do that. And I think just having your finger on the pulse of the conditions and talking with the hut before you go for the climb is important, because there could be some rockfall issues on that route. Yeah, but what could you do? You could go climbing and climb around the Matterhorn. Like August is a great time to climb in the Valles. Yeah. And
I think we climbed the Matterhorn in August.
We may have. And I think, what did we do that trip? We did the Cosmiques, we climbed the Point Lachenal, the Contamine, we did the Dent de Géant. You know, so we did climb the Dent de Géant in August, but we also ran into some tricky rockfall or potential for it.
A little loose.
And so that was a little bit of a note to me, like, yeah, if I'm going to go in August, I definitely want to make sure I'm with someone that can move efficiently. And I've gotten to know the route a little bit better, so I think some of it's manageable, but I'm definitely aware, like, I don't know, I'm pretty honest too. I'll speak my mind, and I think
cool guy. Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no, actually, I think it's a cool time to maybe start end this. We are like 15 minutes overboard. We have we got all your emails in the chat. We collected them, so Jeff will contact you tomorrow when he goes through the raffle. As I said, you will all get the recording of this presentation, and all the you'll get contacts of Jeff and Brian if you want to ask them questions. And thank you again for joining our 57 hours epic adventure on the topic of climbing the classics of Chamonix. I'm sure we'll see Jeff and Brian in our webinar series sometime soon as well. So stay alert. We'll let you know when we have the new webinar ready. And hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Yeah, and
thanks everyone.
I'll be in touch with basically 3 people are going to win the raffle. So you know, the winners will hear from me via email in the next day or two, as soon as I can get to the collecting all the emails together and running them through some sort of digital sorter and picking out 3 winners. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the day.